dude can sing.
It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dawg Show. Your hosts, Troop Brenson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Who died and made you queen of football?
Welcome, Dawg fans, to the one and only Dawg Show with Troop and Smooch and special guest Coach Hayes tonight. Gentlemen, glorious June, and so happy to see you fellas. What's going on?
Well, it's hot. It's hot. That much we know. Mm-hmm. No, it's hot. It's one of those magical weeks where I don't know why all the stuff that happens, the things that we've packed into this show tonight, Troop Brenson, they make football season feel like we're in the downhill. We're 70 days away or whatever, but we're in the downhill right now. I just feel like I feel the momentum, Coach Hayes.
Yes. SEC Media Days coming up. We got a lot of recruiting stuff going on right now in a lot of different places. Good stuff for us as Georgia fans in that regard. And, what I used to love during this time of year, this was the sweating season, man. He was out there on 7-on-7 drills, lifting weights, getting after it, building chemistry with one another, passing game, running game concepts, understanding defensive schemes and its stuff. I know that's what Georgia's going to be headed to here pretty soon, and looking forward to all that we got on the show tonight too.
I thought this was when the high school players and all the coaches went on vacation this time of year. That's not the case.
It's dead Week is the week of the 4th. That's the only week you got dead week in high school.
Wow.
Right now they're still getting after it.
Mm-hmm. And what a week last week. And folks, we introduced our Delusional Fan Index last week in our top 5 teams and fan bases who competed and did very, very well throughout the year in the past couple years. And
it's a tight race.
We weighed in, yes. And so we had the Delusional Fan Index last week, and the response was crazy, especially from the number 1 team. Tennessee did not disappoint in how they responded on social media. To the point, Smooch, where, it was just anger.
Man, I hate Tennessee because, first of all, it's Tennessee.
I thought they would be happy. And to be number 1. I know their baseball season is going great right now. Congratulations. They're in the championship series in college baseball. But I would thought they would be happy to be number 1. And it looks like they could hold on to number 1 for more than 4 days this week. That'll be something to brag about. So why were they so angry? And why did they curse us and call us names and actually get deleted off Twitter? What happened there?
Yeah, we did have one poor fella get blocked. He got in his feels a little too much, and he did not have the when they say you have the right to remain silent, this cat didn't have the ability to. so it got ugly quick. Yeah, Tennessee proved with their reaction to being number 1 in the Delusion Index they belonged. And I'll be honest, it's going to be a little further down the line in the show, but I don't see anybody that can beat this team. It's going to be an upset of huge proportion if Tennessee falls from that number 1 spot in the Delusion Index, Troop.
But I will tell you, though, it was so close last week, and we have another contender charging hard this week. And so it's going to be a nose-to-nose kind of finish. We're going to talk about that later. We're gonna move that to the later in the show, like Smooch said. So don't leave, don't go anywhere, don't touch that dial, as I used to say in years gone by. And we'll get the updated Delusional Fan Index on in the show. But we have some big topics to talk about, and we tried to warn our friends because we do care, Smooch.
We do care.
We tried to warn them that enjoy the recruiting process. Don't, when it's March and May and April, May, June, enjoy it. Don't get so tied into it where you got so many checks you're trying to write, and we're going those receipts come due, or checks come due at some point. We're going to cash in on some receipts tonight, especially from USC, who thought.
Yes. And would you like your receipt?
They thought they had Georgia in a corner. They thought that the SEC was theirs to pillage. And it didn't make sense on its face, right, Coach? When you think about, okay, Georgia, and this is the thing, we had conversations. We were very calm on social media telling these guys, just calm down, because these are Georgia high school. These are from the state of Georgia. Mm-hmm. Georgia is at the all-time high in terms of their football program, and they teach defense. It's going to be hard to pull those recruits from any home state in that situation, not just Georgia, any recruit in that kind of situations. It's going to be tough to go to across the country. We tried to warn them, and they just wouldn't listen.
They don't seem to understand. I think it's a thought of being a good recruiting football team versus actually being a good recruiting football team. I think they want to try to put this sort of glim and glamour on the actual facilities, the program, bringing in, Riley and what he's done. And I don't know really and honestly if Riley has ever been really dedicated to that, because if you look at what his tenure was at Oklahoma, I mean, he was going to produce quarterbacks, but he was producing quarterbacks in the Big 12. It seemed like every year the only game they had was against Texas. They might have had one other team that was going to cause them problems that year, like a Baylor or a Kansas State team, but it was almost very similar to the Big 10 run, where it seemed to be always Ohio State, Michigan every year. So, put it in a conference where you're going to overachieve in a lot of your games. You're going to produce these stats for these quarterbacks. To me, that kind of creates this exacerbation of what a quarterback stats are produced for the Heisman contenders. But when it comes down to it, he never had good defense. He never had, to me, a philosophy that was good for the culture of the program. He ran and went to the Pac-12, where he could have come to the SEC when he was at the height of his coaching tenure, to me. And when he went out west, he just continued to prove, hey, I'm going to produce you these quarterbacks, and this is the only thing I can give you, but I'm not going to add to the culture of USC's program. And that's evident in how they're doing their recruitment right now as well.
It is, and you can say all the right things, and we've seen them say the right things, especially their fan base, because they know what they're deficient in. They understand that. But even some of their pundits are starting to understand, and we got a clip we're going to play in just a bit, that their pundits, they're diehard fans who report to their fans, I guess, the media, they're starting to understand at this point that maybe Riley's not that guy. And so just to be specific, you folks already know Isaiah Gibson, a defensive end, outside backer from is he from Manchester?
No, that's where Terry's from Manchester.
Justice Terry's from Manchester. Yeah.
I got Gibson. I think he is from he's from Warner Robins.
Okay. So these guys from the heart of Georgia, and they took visits to California, and they got like we said, the everything, the glitter, and looks beautiful out there on the West Coast. It's something exotic they've never experienced. They got a new coach coming in that professes to know defense and to change that whole defensive perspective out there and coach defense. That's Coach Eric Henderson. And he may be a good coach, but he comes off as a lot of hype. And one reason is because he wants to take credit for what he did with Aaron Donald. Because they cross paths in the NFL. But
that's exactly right. Yeah.
That's really what happened, though. I mean, they crossed paths. He coached on the same team with them. But Aaron Donald had already loaded up his trophy case. And so if you're going to try to take credit for that, it makes you look a little bit suspicious. So he may be a upgrade from what they've had there. He may be a better recruiter. For right now, it looks like they're going to use smoke and mirrors to get you to make a decision, and then you're going to get home and think about it. And so both Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson, both Georgia players, have decommitted this week, and Georgia fans are just loving it. And the other player that got committed right now is Juju Lewis. He may stick, he may not.
Yeah, he'll be at Auburn.
I think there's a lot of smoke for him ending up at Auburn.
Yeah.
But that realization's been really tough, and we tried to warn them, Smooch, that just calm down, enjoy the process. You guys are going to be okay.
Yeah.
But you can't come out saying stuff like, let me read a couple of things they said. And we all got receipts, I know. They can't come out and say that they're going to raid Georgia, or they're the team now that is SEC caliber. and their defense is just going to overwhelm you, and they're just loading up. You can't say those things.
Yeah, the thing is we talk about not skipping steps. We had the same conversation with Tennessee when they put up 70 points against bad teams. Okay, but you still haven't built anything. You've got a few intriguing pieces, but you haven't built anything. You can't just bring in a new coach and say, oh, the defense is healed, we've brought in a coach. You can't get one or two really shiny recruits and say, oh, we're now a recruiting juggernaut. No, what you have is one or two shiny recruits. Any coach like a Saban or a Kirby that has built something that is long-term, that is built to last, you build the foundation. You build something that sustains itself. You build something that gradually grows. You don't make one or two splash changes and then just claim all of your problems are over. And, I have nothing against USC whatsoever. And so I spoke to a guy, one of my receipts. I spoke to a guy and I said, Junior, his name is actually Junior. And I said, Junior, listen, there's going to be a number of flips from that class. And I said, I promise you, I know there are. And I'm not even sure exactly where they're going to go. I've got a good idea, but I can tell you, you're going to have numerous decommits. And he, in an incredibly condescending manner, not going to happen. It's an impossibility. There's no way Terry or Gibson would ever decommit from this team. And then he goes on to explain later what we have now. And all he names is exactly what I said. Those the little splash moves, hires, players, all that. They slap a Band-Aid on and then claim to be completely healed. And that's not how it works.
Well, and they thought that they had got those guys in the fold. And the next recruit was Elijah Griffin. Mm-hmm. And he may be the jewel of the whole class. He's the one I've been watching, and he's a Georgia lean, it looks like right now. And so they had him supposedly visiting, and they were trying to wrap that up. And so that was the next step for USC, and they were feeling themselves. And we've been there. Georgia has had seasons where, before Kirby Smart especially, where you thought we were on the precipice of signing some kind of a elite class, and you're pulling these players out of different states and different places, and that falls apart. It really is hard to go into a player's home state with a school who's doing very well and who has evidence and proof that they develop players. It's tough to do that. And we saw that all the way. We were going to be confident and patient. It happened quicker than I thought it would, Smooch. I figured it would go a little bit longer, but we don't even know for a fact that Gibson nor Terry are going to end up on Georgia's roster. We don't know that. Mm-hmm. The tea leaves do point to that, but anything could happen, and there's still visits to be taken. These guys are still going to take visits, but right now, some of the experts are saying Georgia is getting the nod. They're leaning towards Georgia.
Yeah, I think that Coach. I think what these players. I can't remember who I heard. I listen to so many people, but the flash can work, but that is such a fleeting thing. In romance, they call it limerence, right? That feeling, mm-hmm. that excited, dizzy feeling when you're first experiencing something new, and it's so attractive, but as quickly as it comes, right. It goes away, and then you miss mama, and you want your friends from high school to watch you play, mm-hmm. and why would you live in the best football state in the country? Why would you go as far as you possibly could away from it?
You have so many intangibles when you're trying to deal with a 16 or 17-year-old teenager. I'm sorry, but when it comes to that, their eyes were wide open. And after they had the time to come back and travel back home, after they had made the decision from a guy who was not even a graduate of USC to be sort of their head recruiter guy with the defensive line coach, Aaron Donald, I think they sobered up, from a literal standpoint, not a literal standpoint, I guess you would say that's a figurative standpoint, but they sobered up from their decision making and realized they probably made a poor decision. When it comes down to it, I look at people like Isaiah Gibson, who made a comment and says, every time I go on a visit, there's one particular school everyone has to say something about. And we all know that he's assuming it's the University of Georgia that they're talking about. And how is it now that can be any kind of positive recruiting for that actual college that's saying that kind of stuff to these kids? These kids aren't dumb. Basically, you're helping Georgia out by saying that. because you're helping people, you're helping our program out by saying that to that teenager, because you're basically saying, hey, you're not good enough to play for the University of Georgia, so why don't you come play for us? So not only are you belittling, what that kid can do, you're also saying, well, our program's not where Georgia is. So, and these kids aren't dumb. They figure that kind of stuff out. I think that Terry is probably going to be one of those. He is a heavier lean towards us right now. I think Gibson's still going to make it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gibson's at Ohio State this weekend. He's up there with David Sanders is right now. Now, Elijah Griffin is out west at USC, but I think Kirby's probably just telling. He's probably going to be trolling out there. He's going out to USC to Southern California he's having a nice little vacation out there. And granted, they need to do this. They deserve that as being good elite athletes and people who want you. Why wouldn't you want to go out there and just see what it's about? But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to playing ball, wanting your family to be a part of what you're going to be doing and developing through those years, and it's not like University of Georgia is just throwing out this facade. All right, they've proven it. They're winning championships. They're putting people in the league at lethal dose level. It's not like we're just saying something hypothetically out there. Hey, you come to Georgia, you might be developed, or hey, we might win a championship with you. We're doing it. And whether you want to get on board or not, that's up to you, brother, because we've got plenty of people that want to come here and play ball. So, that's the reason why, like I said, in this situation, it's nice to see them both come back, basically take the reins like we talked about, and coming back home and decommitting from USC, and hopefully both of them coming to Georgia. It'd be very nice to see them both. But we're not even talking about the Elijah Griffin kid, who's also a heavy lean towards Georgia. I really do think, when it's all said and done, guys, that we are going to see one of the best, if not the best, recruiting class that Kirby Smart's ever signed, and that's saying a lot. There's a lot of kids out there that we don't even know about that are sitting on heavy leans with Georgia and are silent commits right now. And I think we're going to see that. It's just something very spectacular.
We started hearing from folks we know that, hey, Georgia in 2025 is going to be putting out some incredible athletes. We've been hearing about it for a little while, since these kids were in middle school. We've been hearing this is coming. There is a crop coming, and because Kirby's always he's a step ahead of where every pundit and where every fan and blowhard like us is. Kirby's 3 steps ahead. He's already thought about every scenario. We love to act like, oh my gosh, did Kirby not think about this? And he's already got a solution to it. You know? And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, with the recruiting, I'm not going to never not trust Kirby Smart anymore, ever. Right. So if there's a kid that sort of mistakenly decides to decommit here in the next couple of weeks, or, he's decommitting for a reason. He's learned that there's somebody coming in that he's going to have to outcompete, and he can't outcompete him. So, that's what you're talking about with Kirby having sort of those 3 steps ahead, 4 steps ahead. I don't ever get really, and I told you guys probably, I guess it's been 6 months ago on one of y'all's podcasts that I've done with you, I'm never going to get on this roller coaster ride for recruiting. I love to evaluate talent. I love to evaluate the potential of what they are and what they will be for Georgia, but never am I going to get on this roller coaster ride. We could have one that is on our roster right now for commitment of 2025 that decides in November he doesn't want to be on the team anymore and decommit himself. So I'm not going to get too high or too low, but it is exciting to see the potential of what we've got coming to this recruiting class.
Yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned that roller coaster ride that you can get on if you follow recruiting, because these kids are young and they don't always know what they want to do. It's never clear choices, it seems, especially with the top end talent. USC has been on that roller coaster ride, and we're going to kind of chronicle that in our next little segment called Anatomy of a Murder. Okay, Anatomy of a Murder, and I'm going to go through that roller coaster and stages of realization, grief, whatever you want to call it, as the murder took place at the very end. We know it did. And here's how it happened. All right.
Now let's say before we go, this is Troop did not write this material. Troop collected this material.
It's not writing. This is me just putting it in order for you folks to understand exactly what happened. So, we read some of the pundits or some of the fan base for USC, and what we read to start off with when they got those commits was Georgia is getting raided by Coach Henney and USC. Raided. They come into Georgia and just raiding Georgia. And it didn't. Yeah.
I was going to say, to Coach's point earlier, see, they base their success off somehow feeling like they're getting one over on Kirby. That shows you the elite level of the Georgia program, is that success means you have bested Kirby somehow.
Yes. They moved right on from that and just still on that high after getting those early commitments to Georgia is now a pipeline for USC. So they're just setting all up. Georgia's become the pipeline. USC goes in there and plucks the best because USC is, they like saying something like, you're not us. You think you're us, you're not USC. They're still, how many years ago when they put their records out or their successes out, I saw somebody put it out there on Twitter, and the time frame started in 1967. So they were, recruits right now don't care about that. 1967's has no effect on what happens in 2024, 2025. So they're still leaning on some of those old accolades. So Georgia's now the pipeline, and now they moved on to just feeling themselves again, Smooch and Coach, that Coach Eric Henderson, is the best defensive line coach on the planet.
Coach Hayes, your thoughts?
He hasn't proven anything to me based off what he's put on the field. I mean, you look at where he's at. I mean, it's hard. I mean, Trey Scott, I know what he's done. I've watched him over the last, but you bring somebody in just on the assumption because he's been in the league and he's probably a good coach. But obviously right now what he's showing me is just a better talker and a big hype person than he is being a football coach. And that's something that's tough for me to see. It's just like with talking about Coach Smart. Everybody right now, whether they want to admit it or not, are going to create some kind of false bias. They're going to create some kind of justification for themselves where it takes them back, just like you're talking about with USC. Relevancy, Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. That's 2004, 2005 time. Yeah. Kids don't even care about that. I mean, that's 20 years ago. Yeah. You're still looking at the relevancy of that. There's nothing that can be more relevant than the present. And right now in the present, we're producing. These other people are just talking. And until they can show it and produce something on tape that's legitimate for me, it's hard for me to sit there and say, well, he could be a good coach, but let me see it on the field. Let me see all of a sudden a defensive line that's dominating in the in the Big 12, I guess this year is where they'll be at because there's only 4 teams now. I mean, 4 conferences now. But, I'm just looking at it from that standpoint. Produce and let me see it on tape, and then I might have a better understanding of your legitimacy.
The height of their euphoria was them getting those commitments. We know commitments are just verbal commitments. And then they think their coaching staff is, I read this, their coaching staff is second to none. They have a coaching staff that can compete with anybody right now. Coach Henderson is the best defensive line coach, best recruiter in the country. Yeah. But earlier in the week, Isaiah Gibson, Georgia defensive end from Georgia, he decommits. And then we hear a different wording come out, and they said that it was a mutual parting of ways. Because they couldn't get him to commit to an official visit. And so they were okay. If he wouldn't come visit officially when they wanted him to, then they were okay. They were good just passing on Isaiah Gibson. And so you see that start to happen, mutually parting ways, and then Justice Terry follows suit soon after. And then the realization starts to sink in, and it starts going the opposite way. Yeah, and
they get over the top of the hill and start heading down.
They are headed down. And so then they start trying to figure out, well, what just happened and what can we do to salvage our egos here? Because they had already said all they needed to say in terms of that. So then it was, USC can do more with less because of our coaching staff. Lots of talented teams or less talented teams beat better teams all the time in college football.
Oh my. Yeah, but USC doesn't. I mean, it's that
they're not. It's not that. If we don't have the talent, we still gonna sneak up and beat you.
No, and they're not. You have to play defense. But I said this last week on the show. So for all the USC people, defense is what you play when the other team has the football, and they have no interest in it. What they have an interest in is fixing or getting one thing and claiming it's all done. Remember last year they got Bear Alexander, and all of a sudden the defense was dominant. It was going to be a top 10 defense. Book it. We have all of those bookmarks. Yes. And in the end, the USC defense didn't become more like Georgia. Bear Alexander became more like USC.
Yes.
Very well put.
And I'll tell you, that is great point. But the most ridiculous comment that I read, and it's just, you said it last week too, that they're just so isolated. They don't really understand at this point real football. One of their fans said this in this Anatomy of a Murder: recruits choosing NIL over development. So he thought that
is so tone deaf.
those recruits leaving or decommitting and maybe looking out there leaning towards Georgia, they were getting, it was an NIL, and they were passing up on the wonderful development defensively they could have at USC. That was his comment.
Well, that's more delusional than that's even hard to argue, Coach. That's just straight up delusional. That's they're the king of glitz and glam. I mean,
I was about to say that's complete contradiction of what I mean. You think that coach had any kind of relationship with either one of those kids when they both said they were going to commit to USC? You don't think there was a pile of cash sitting there, or at least something on talk between them in a very closed room of what the dollar signs were going to be? That not having a relationship with kids is being there with them when they feel like they want to go home to mom because they're so depressed or something's going on in their life and dealing with all the anxieties, and you have to go over to their dorm room at 2:00 in the morning and sit down and have a heart-to-heart with almost like a father-son comment. That's relationships with your kids. That's getting after their ass at practice during the day, but then going over and loving on them after it's over and said and done. That's relationships with kids. You can't sit there and tell me that you're just throwing dollar signs at them and you're not going to establish a relation. That's a huge contradiction in my set, the way I see things.
Yep, and that murder was completed with this last comment here, Smooch.
The climax.
The climax is this is where they ended up. Just getting commitments and being in the race for these recruits means they are headed in the right direction. They are just in the conversation. We're in that conversation, and we get those commits. Even if they decommit, we're still heading in the right direction. Does that sound so much like Tennessee? That's
Southern California, the land of the participation trophy. That is a participation trophy, honorable mention type of statement. Look, we're just happy to be in it. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in Tennessee.
Like a week before, they were raiding Georgia though, and they were coming for Elijah Griffin and whoever else they tried to get. They really thought they had a chance at Michael Williams and Kristen Miller. Mm-hmm. That was in all of their forums. That those two guys, They had a great shot to get them to transfer over. That's where they were. That was not like just a wing on a wing and a prayer. They really thought that could happen. But we did locate a podcast called Inside the Trojan Huddle, and I think Chris Arledge is the one speaking. This lets you know how, man, it's complete. These are guys who believe, and they've been self-professed sunshine pumpers for USC, so they're always optimistic. But after this week, not so much. We're just going to play you a clip of that.
What you're about to hear is the voice of a man who has seen behind the curtain, as they say in show business.
Chris Arledge. Chris
Arledge. He has been to the puppet show. He has seen the strings.
We're USC fans. We want to believe. We badly want to believe. I'm having trouble believing right now. And I'm having trouble believing because there's this nagging suspicion that I have. People are gonna roast me for this. I'm saying it anyway. What's the purpose of the internet if not to overreact, right? So I have a nagging suspicion that Lincoln Riley may just not be as good as we thought he was when he showed up. Oof. If you decide that your recruiting strategy is to pull the top 5 guys out of Georgia, when Georgia is the elite program in college football, that is an extraordinarily high-risk strategy. And I don't know this for sure. I hope I'm wrong. I'm sometimes wrong. I hope this is one of them. I think it's going to blow up in his face.
He's not wrong. He did.
No. Translation, why don't you focus on being better than Josh Heupel or Hugh Freeze before you go after Kirby Smart?
He just said it. It's ridiculous to try to come into Georgia's backyard where Georgia is as a program right now and take the recruits and swing. I mean, swinging for the fences is one thing, but it just blew up in their face. They're not there. You can't. They're not on that stage just yet, and they kind of thought they might be when they hired Coach Henney. I laugh every time I say that. Coach Henney. It's a stage name, right?
Yeah.
So, that really lays it out there. Really, I mean, perfect.
It's funny that you guys say all this to hear somebody actually who is more probably biased towards USC to see that. And unfortunately, I just see that Lincoln Riley, I don't know how serious he is about wanting to be at that elite level that Kirby Smart is at, and some of these other coaches that are trying to get there as well. We have always been a talent pool state. I mean, per square miles, I mean, you look at us, we had, I think, the second most amount of 5-stars in the state, and I think that's probably pretty prevalent every year. Texas is always number one, but heck, we could fit 2 Georgias inside of Texas's state. Easily. I mean, with the square mileage of everything, but still, we produce national level talent every year. If you're getting a kid out of Georgia, it's a big deal. Even the 4-star kids that they're rating are a big deal when you're getting them from Georgia. And I agree. If Lincoln Riley is truly serious about wanting to be an elite level coach, it's not just about his X's and O's. It's not just about developing and making gaudy stats for your quarterback. It's honestly building a culture that surrounds USC from a different standpoint that doesn't just make them look like a Southern California, Barbie doll. We can't have this this mentality of thinking, okay, when I come to USC, I feel like I'm part of something. You're not. I don't know if that's really the case when you go out there. I'm sure if you were from that area, maybe it would feel more like home. But I know a good old Georgia boy that goes out to Southern California, and you try to throw this bag at them. You show all these celebrities and these people who have fame, and you bring them to them and say, hey, look, this is what you could be. But we're not. Am I going to be a developed football player for the NFL one day? Am I going to be a better man? Am I going to learn what it's like when things get tough and be able to come out of it and be a better person for it? That's, to me, what I feel like these kids are getting at Georgia. It's not just about necessarily being a great nose tackle and taking on 2 players at one time and destroying a double team. There's a lot of things that go into the development of a young man who's playing ball. And I just don't see that happening out at USC. And until they figure out a way to surround that and encapsulate that, I don't ever know if that's ever going to be a solution for him out there.
I've got I have this theory I've been working on, and it is this, that if Kirby's all in on a player, that's a high character player. Now, everybody says high character, but Kirby knows the difference between competitive arrogance and actual arrogance. There's a huge difference. Kirby knows where that line is. And these kids of high character, they value family. They want to belong. They want community. They want to feel like that man that is beating them just into the ground loves them. Like you were saying earlier, run them till they puke, put your arm around them, tell them you love them at the end of the practice. They need to feel that. These are high character. If Kirby wants them, they're high character players. And this idea that you're going to throw some Hollywood at them and you're going to pull them out there, it's actually quite insulting. And do I think some of the way this has gone down and will continue to go down at USC is a bit disrespectful? I think yes, because I think we treated these kids disrespectfully by saying you're basically a whore and you'll go with whoever pays you the most money. True, Brent?
Right. Well, Georgia has shown that they are more than willing to play the long game. And if a player gets excited about another team, another program somewhere, Georgia says, okay, enjoy yourself. Go out and see what you will need to know. Talk to the people you need to talk to. And we're going to continue this relationship right here. And that pays dividends because it doesn't feel like you're trying to sell them a bill of goods. You've got the best interest at heart. We're going to give you USC fans a little break. We know it's been a tough week. I will tell you that we have plans to have one of your big voices, Zulu Trojan, has agreed to come on the show. We're going to record with him this weekend and have it on next week's show. That's the plan right now. And great dude. And listen,
that is a cool guy. That's a cool guy to come on after this USC stuff this week. That's a stand-up move.
Yep, he'll tell you. He said, "Ain't nothing stopping us. Ain't nothing stopping me. We're going to push forward. It is what it is." So kudos to him. We'll hope to have him on next week. We do want to move this show right along, though, and because there's another little bit of info that came out a couple days ago where it wasn't a recent comment, but it was something that Jalen Milroe said after he played Georgia in the SEC championship that's been getting a lot of airtime lately. And I think that the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart are going to be used if they've needed it. if they didn't, they're still going to use what Milroe had to say about the Dogs in the SEC championship.
I'm big on body language and looking in the opponent's eyes. They look defeated and they didn't want any more. And I knew that, our team knew it was going to be a 60-minute game, and Georgia didn't believe in that.
Really?
We need to pray. We need to pray for that guy.
That is right. We need to have a little special time for Jalen Milroe, and he didn't have to say anything. I think Georgia was going to get after him no matter what next year, with reckless abandon, as it were. But just saying that Georgia was defeated and they didn't want none of that, so to speak. They didn't want to play 60 minutes. That's a far cry from the reality in that Georgia locker room.
When college football is a game of motivation, we've seen motivated teams absolutely beat teams that were far better than them. You never give a team motivation for free. You never do that. He did that there. You know why? Because Saban is gone. I mean, that's why things like this are being said.
He showed you some of those characteristics, though, even last year, Smooch. You could see there were some things that just felt like he wasn't really.
Well, he got benched. He got benched last year.
Yeah, he wasn't ready. There were some moments where he looked like he was immature in the way he handled some things. So.
The first thing I look at, you've got, first off, we know we're not in Nick Saban's world anymore. For him to make that kind of comment. Secondly, this is the same kid after he threw that Hail Mary 4th and 31 at Auburn that was lucky as piss to get caught, saying, give me the Heisman, making that kind of comment after he does that. This is the same kid who got sacked over 40 times, had to run for his life for the majority of that time. His passing accuracy and his passing yardage was, I would say, it was okay, but it was nothing to really look at and say that's superior to everyone else that's out there. Mm-hmm. And I see him being on this program, and honestly, after he said what he said, I think to it, didn't Georgia fight them all the way down, and they only lost by 3? And there's so many things that went on in that game, and I think we fought to the last minute, basically. The only reason why we couldn't win is you ran the clock out on us, because we were still scoring and brought it to a 3-point game at the end of the game. So don't sit there and tell me that we look defeated in our eyes. That just blows me away. I look across the board and I see the leadership of our program, but don't sit there and give them, because honestly, Georgia doesn't need any bulletin board material. Will it be bulletin board material? Yeah. They'll definitely use it that week, I'm sure of, but they don't need that anymore. They just need to go out there and do what, and quit just making all the hypotheticals be hypotheticals and just win. They need to go out to Tuscaloosa. They need to let Kalen DeBoer know who they are. Okay, that is a big win for us out there. I don't care who's coaching them. It's that team that we're playing because of what we have history with over the last 5 years.
Right.
And we need to win. We need to win probably that game more than any game on the schedule. I know a lot of people say, well, that's crazy. No, not to me. I would like to go out and beat them boys by 3 touchdowns on their own field and let Jalen Milroe, sit there and mull over that and see what he can say after that ball game.
Yeah, 100%. We need to go ahead and bury that ghost. You're right. That's the most important thing.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can tell. I mean, we've talked about this before. There is something, whether it was Saban or whether it was Alabama. We're going to find out third week of the season. We're going to find out which one it was, and that is one of those things. Just get over the hump, and the hump's gone.
I always told my players in baseball that it's okay to talk and have fun and get all excited and get jacked up, but you keep your talk about your own team and your own players. Once you go outside of the framework of your own team, you talk about another team, then we got some issues. Then you open yourself up. Whatever happens after that is you brought it on. You didn't have to say that. Obviously, like you said, it makes no sense. It made no sense that he wants the Heisman after throwing a Hail Mary. It makes no sense him saying Georgia couldn't play a 60-minute game and them being a 3-point game at the into the last possession. That is total illogic. It's not logical to say that. It's dumb, really. So that's some of the things as a leader and a quarterback, and he's not a typical, big passing quarterback. He kind of does things off.
No, Carson back through for 1,000 more yards, by the way, just so
yeah. So I think, Coach, and that's one thing we wanted to ask you is how does Georgia affect Milroe differently this year than they did last year?
Well, the first thing they can't do defensively is they can't run the double spy. technique. I think sometimes, and then, it's easy for me to sit here being an armchair defensive coordinator because the man does it for a living and has done it for so long, so well. I don't know. It just seems like sometimes he tried to outthink himself when he played Coach Saban. He wanted to impress, and I've done that too. I was a defensive coordinator against my head coach 3 different times because I was at 5 different schools over my 20-year period. And it's a little different when you play your old coach because you want to beat that ass. I mean, you want to do something different. And I understand why he wanted to go in that direction with it to do things. But I think it got to the point where our pass rush wasn't getting there, and even running the double spy on Jalen really still hurt us because he was effective when he needed to be in the passing game. But it was really funny how their offensive linemen, their 2 offensive tackles specifically, had a very poor year, from their pass pro standpoint, all of a sudden magically better against us. I don't know. It's just kind of odd, watching film and breaking that down, but I don't even want to go there. I'll be there all night. But don't run the double spy. I think we need to run our game. Our defensive front's going to be a lot better this year, more consistent. Yeah. I think we'll bring more hats to the football in a better way. And this year it's kind of the opposite. We got to get to him, and definitely when we get home, we tackle him. I said this just a few days ago with our show. Me and John were talking. It's like, I can't tell you how many times we ran stunts and blitzes into the backfield, and we just didn't get home. Quarterback evaded us. We got away from us. And, when we get home, we got to get home. N'Kobe Dean showed, when he came through, or if it was Channing Tindall, or if it was Robert Beal or somebody getting through, they would get through, and a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, they were taking the quarterback down or taking the running back down if it was a delayed handoff or whatever it was. But we've got to get home on our blitzes. If you're going to bring people from the second level, you sacrifice that level. So if they're leaving from the linebacker level, they've got to get home, or something's going to come open at that second level underneath the defensive secondary. So, it just comes down to it. I think we play our game. We continue to do well, and what I'm hoping this year is that our defensive front produces more havoc, so our secondary doesn't have to cover as long. Because you saw sometimes when we needed to get to the quarterback and we're running that double spy and he's not running, and secondary is just like quarterback. You've got a 4-second window. I always told my secondary, if you're having to cover man-to-man over 4 seconds, that's hella tough. It's very tough to do. And so we got to get to him. We got to get pressure to him. We got to play solid. We got to fit, and we got to communicate very well. We got to execute. It's just very simple. I know those are the coach speak terms that you love to hear before a ball game, but I mean, it really is those kind of things. We don't outthink ourselves. We go out and play our ball game with our athletes. Our athletes should beat their athletes. Shouldn't be no problem.
That's kind of my question. That kind of dovetails into it. Coach, to me, it felt like we schemed up pressure last year. And this year, with what we're putting on the field, it feels like we're going to have pressure based on our athletes, based on the development of our players.
You would be amazed at when you call an X stunt with your linebackers, where you bring, you saw it sometimes. Smile will be on the outside opposite of Jalen Walker. We still have one backer in the middle of the field, and they did run some kind of X stunt with a tackle in the middle backer, and our middle backer wouldn't time up the cadence right, and he would run right into the chest of the guard. Well, when he's gone and hitting that guard, we're done for in that blitz. That's what I'm talking about. He's going to learn to time those concepts up, the linebackers especially. And, of course, our defensive linemen have another year under their belt, hopefully going to get better at getting off blocks. And so, if you time those things up right, you start executing those blitzes, because that's one thing I would always tell defensives that I would do. I'd say, we're not going to blitz until you learn how to blitz effectively. Because why does send a blitz through a gap and when it executes and you can't tackle the quarterback in the backfield? It's worthless, to the honest truth. So, we would have drills where we would just work on that specific drill to execute the blitz correctly, or the stunt correctly, or the stem before the stunt, and take care of the gaps and do our job. So, and I know that's being coached every day. It is being coached every day to ad nauseum. I'm not saying that Georgia's not doing that, but obviously we need to make sure that this year, hopefully, that front seven does their job, and hopefully helps the secondary out so they're not having to cover over that 4-second window.
I got one brief little thing, Troop. I'll throw it right back to you. Mykel Williams is still 19 years old. He turns 20 in 9 days. How about that?
He's awesome. I expect him to be a beast this year and to affect that game, to affect the quarterbacks, and be a lot stouter on the edges. And I also expect those linebackers with a little more experience and more health as well. Smile Mondon, and then you got those other young linebackers who were in their first year last season. You're gonna see a different type of player who knows what they're seeing, and the game slows down for them a bit. So that makes me really happy, and I think our defensive line is going to be good. I just think in the mindset is going to be different, I think, against Alabama. Alabama, I had a feeling Alabama was going to give Georgia their best game. They had just played Auburn and looked ridiculous, but I figured that against Georgia, they would lock it all down because you got no margin for error. And players are human. They know that. They know when they got a team that they don't, they can not really focus all week in practice just as much and get every ounce of what they're trying to prepare to do and the focus part. But when you're playing a team like Georgia, that's the thing is when you have that target on you, teams will lock it down and give you
they're going to play. You're going to get the best they got. That's right.
But to quote The Rock, for Jalen Milroe, shut your mouth and know your role. Go out there and do your job, and then I'll have a little bit more respect for you when you're talking that way towards a football program that played you yard for yard for 60 minutes and only lost by 3 points when we had all the reasons in the world to say why we were down where we were at. We competed and played a football game. Hell's coming, and it's week 4 when we come to Tuscaloosa.
Week 4,
coming,
there you go.
It's coming with him. So I'm excited to see what they do when they get there.
One of the things that amazes me is I have heard about the Williams kid breaking his knee in the national championship game against the Dawgs. Since that game occurred, Georgia could easily rely on a catch that was a drop. They could easily lean back on a few different things. No, look, we played our C- game. You beat us by 3. That's it. That's the game.
No chirping needed. Chirping is not going to help you next.
No chirping needed because, not only do you get us this year, but you're coming to our place next year. And so that game, Coach is so right. That game in Tuscaloosa is so huge because it sets a tone. If Georgia goes in there and smokes these guys, that game in Athens, there is the mental edge of that game switches teams. If they
big
go
mental
smoke
hurdle.
them.
Yes,
sir. Exactly.
All right. Great segment. Let's move on and have a little fun, smooches. We had great time with this last week. Our new segment, not new in terms of delusion, but the Delusional Fan Index.
True and smooch. Delusion Index.
Yes. And we are so glad you folks stayed around to hear this. We knew you folks were waiting for it, just to hear if your team moved up. I could say that it's just for Georgia fans, but we heard other fans kind of carrying on during the week on social media about the index and whether they'd be on it or whether they'd be moving up. And I was like, look at this. I mean, other than Tennessee, who were very upset. Yes. They were number 1. I mean, come on, take number 1s where you can, Tennessee.
That's right. I mean, accept it and love it. Embrace your role. Like Coach said, know your role. Your role is to be delusional and be made fun of.
Yeah. We did have some movement in the DFA, the index this week. And Smooch, we're going to start that out with number 5. The Colorado Buffaloes.
All right, so slid down a little bit this week, right? Oh,
yeah, they were so close.
I forgot the laugh track. Hold on, there it is.
They were so close, Smooch, to being number 1 last week.
They were
close.
They were. They've just gotten a little quieter. I think that's why they've fallen to number 5.
Maybe they said, okay, well,
But they did poke their head up for one statement this week.
For one statement, they kind of kept them in there, and Ohio State did drop out. Maybe I should have mentioned that just yet. But we do have some movement, and Colorado moved from 3 to 5.
Yeah, Coach mentioned.
Here's what they said.
Go ahead.
Here's what they said. And this was about Isaiah Gibson as well.
Yeah, Coach.
He came on. Yeah, he came out this week and had some comments about there's one team that I hear about everywhere I go. And it was a derogatory thing that Gibson was saying, man, I hear about this team. Somebody got something to say about them everywhere I go. Colorado thinks it's about them.
That's true. Colorado thinks he's
Gibson,
referencing that.
He thinks the Colorado's referenced at all these other big schools that everybody's talking about Coach Prime and the Buffaloes.
So they're not negative recruiting against Kirby Smart. They're negative recruiting against Primetime and Shador.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna leave that right there. I don't have anything else to say.
that kept them in because we were prepared to push them on out. That
Yeah.
did keep them in. You know,
Last minute. Yeah, they jumped back in at the last minute.
the last minute. All right, Colorado. So congratulations, number 5. We're moving up to number 4 in the index, delusional fan index, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide.
The great ones make it look so easy. I mean, it's you know, our buddy over on Bulldog Report. If you don't follow Bulldog Report, do that immediately. Stop the podcast, go do that, and then come back. But he noticed it this week. These fans at Alabama, they cannot stand not being talked about, and so for that reason, they're a bulwark in this index.
And a lot of it is still about their coaching staff, and it's like they know it's a question mark. They know people have a right to be skeptical, but they're just going to push right on through. Just push right on through it and say, "You guys said we couldn't recruit. We just picked up this guy." And, yeah, you're gonna be able to recruit, or this is the best coaching staff that we could possibly have brought in, and we're going to continue to win. And DeBoer is this, and DeBoer is that. We don't know what DeBoer is. We do know his resume coming to the SEC is something to be questioned. We do know that Alabama's players coming into last year was a team that lacked toughness and discipline. You saw it in the penalties. You saw it in just their up and down games. They had so many games where, and we called it out the last few years, Smooch, that it's not the same product. Alabama was showing you the problems, the culture problems. It was there. Do you think you're going to bring a whole new coaching staff in there and all those things are going to be fixed, and you're just going to – and you got your quarterback, your supposed leader, saying some of the ridiculous things he says. Just those things look great when everything goes well. But as soon as something doesn't go well, it falls apart quickly.
You got as many ifs as Tennessee right now. That's all we can say.
You think? Let me ask you this: do you think Nick Saban ever has Roll Tide Willie out on the actual practice field with him, talking to him? And
I do not.
With him? Yeah, my point made.
Did you see that they had Saban was speaking at some event? And he was on stage, and they brought Roll Tide Willie out, and he came up to Saban, and Saban was very dismissive. He was just like, he kind of put his left hand out there to kind of shake it, and just turned away and kept on doing what he's like. No. That was
massively awkward.
It was no part of that.
Oh my goodness.
All right, we're gonna move on to number 3, and a new team jumps into the top 5, the Auburn Tigers.
Auburn Tigers, guys, you fought for it and you got it. Congratulations.
and it's really on the shoulders of one of your fans that we just got to know on social media, and his calling, I guess his tag is Vanilla Vic.
Oh, Vanilla Vic. Yeah,
I think that's who they're calling Peyton Thorne. If he's the Vanilla Vic,
they're calling that's what they're saying about Peyton Thorne. You know, he had that. Yeah, it's all Auburn should be able to go at least 9-3 with this schedule, 9-3 in the SEC and a playoff berth. I think we'll go at least 1-2 against UGA, Bama, Missouri, and I think we win out. And then I am not worried about Oklahoma or Kentucky. I'm going to tell you as a friend, Auburn, be worried. Be worried.
And he also said that the most ridiculous thing he said is that Auburn has a better roster than Georgia, and he wants to debate it. I think he wants to come on the show and go through rosters. I don't think that would turn out well for him, but he is trying to sell that Auburn has a better roster, and he can prove it. That's what he said.
Yeah. Well, Coach, because he is actually arguing that a 5-star wide receiver freshman is going to come in and set the world on fire and put an offense on his shoulders and take them over the top.
Well, you look at Luther Burton at Missouri, at least he had a quarterback that could throw him the football. The problem is it's not the fact that you got the Cam Coleman kid. I think that's his name. That's it. The 5-star kid at Auburn. It's the fact that you've got a quarterback that's inconsistently not getting him the football. He's a good running quarterback, but in the SEC, you're going to get beat on a lot, and you got to learn to be able to sit up in the pocket and throw the football down the field. He's going to have to learn and grow. I mean, we've got a lot of 5-star kids that, you say you come in as a wide receiver day one and you're ready to play. More than likely, you're going to take more knots on the head than you are going to be effective to start with, because you've got to learn by doing. It's what I call trial by fire. You see it both defensively and offensively. That's going to be their crutch. Now, I'm going to say this. Hugh Freeze, to me, is a good coach. I'm going to say that out loud. He did a really good job when he was at Ole Miss. I know he was under all the repercussions of, what he was doing. But at that time, there was a lot of coaches that were doing that, honestly, to tell you the truth. He just happened to be caught with that. And then he had a lot of stuff, backstory going on behind the scenes, too, that really caused a lot of issues with him, too. But as far as coaching football, did a great job. Went to Liberty. All he did was win there, too. And, I mean, Liberty's a good program. But, you come back to the SEC and you take Auburn. I think that's the perfect fit for him. He's just got to, again, bring those kids in, establish a culture. And he's doing what Lincoln Riley's not doing. He's being somewhat realistic about these kids he's bringing in. A spot here, a spot there. And he's got some good kids coming in. So I can agree that I think they're going to start being more competitive, but it's all going to be based off what Peyton Thorne can do at quarterback. And honestly, until he's gone, I don't think they're going to see much more than 9-3. To me is kind of stretching it. But if Peyton Thorne can find a niche, and because defensively they've always been tough. Yeah. So, it comes down to that. Well, what Peyton Thorne and like I said, Cam's going to shine at times. He's going to have those plays against some of those FBS schools that they'll play at the beginning of the year, and everybody's going to get excited about it. But I don't see him carrying that throughout the course of the year and being someone they can ride on for the entire year.
Not this year, but there is some smoke that we mentioned earlier that Juju Lewis. Yep. Auburn is one of those landing spots. It keeps coming up, and Hugh Freeze is a good recruiter. And it's close to home compared to USC. So
from Carrollton down there, it's really close, no doubt.
I can say nothing would make me happier as a Georgia fan than to see Juju come from USC to Auburn and we get to play them. Please let this happen. We're pulling for your War Tigers.
We are. War Tigers.
All right. Well, congratulations to the Auburn Tigers. Moving on to number 2 in the DFA index, the USC Trojans.
No surprise here. They're really one of the key reasons that Ohio State plummeted this week out of the DFA or the Delusional Index. Yeah, we've already really laid it out, right?
Yeah, we did.
I mean, you've gone through the roller coaster of saying we're better than Kirby. We can recruit Georgia better than Kirby can, to now you're saying, well, we mutually parted ways with these guys, all the way over to, well, it was just great to be in the conversation. The fact that we were even in the conversation, we're going to claim a moral victory over that. And there we are.
Yeah, definitely some lingering delusion there. And you can't just erase all that we read and heard. So they're gonna be up there for a little while. We'll see how they respond to all the setbacks and see you saw the coping happen at the very end of the week and some of the things we laid out.
We might have to get on a watch alert, though, once Juju decommits and goes wherever he's planning on going. It's going to be crazy.
Kidding.
I know. I've never thought I would feel sorry for another team before, but it's like I think the only team I couldn't feel sorry for is Tennessee. Like, if their whole roster decommitted, I'd probably be excited. But yeah, if Juju when Juju leaves USC, I'm not. It's going to be bittersweet for me. I'll be laughing, but at the same time, man, that's a lot to take.
Sure is.
All right. Well, no further ado here. We'll move on to the number 1 spot. If you've already seen who has been on here and who's not been called out yet, no surprise, the Tennessee Volunteers.
The Tennessee Volunteers. True.
Back-to-back weeks.
Back-to-back. And I'll be honest with you, they widened the gap this week.
They didn't let up. When I think some of the history of
no complacency,
holding on to the number 1 spot for very long, they said, no, we got this, and we're going to run right through the finish line, wherever that may be. And what really showed us that is the way they responded last week, because we could have, we got plenty of material that we've been here, we continuously hear, but the way they responded to be number 1. This is for fun. We're having a good time. It's football. There's no games going on right now. We're just having a good time with our fan bases, our friends. So that's what it's meant to be about. but they were very angry. They were. I mean, I could say one person, but it's not just one person. There were multiple people on our social media.
162 comments or something. Yeah.
How many names? Idiots and morons and. We can call so many names.
What is their obsession with? They really leg humper. How many times we get called leg humper? They really think that's a. I don't know what Tennessee fan decided that was a pejorative for Dawgs fans, but it really doesn't bother us.
It's like it gets when it gets personal.
Yeah.
And you're in your emotions that much, you can't just enjoy it and go back and forth. And what are you doing? What are you doing? A reality check. Which reality is tough for people in delusion, Smooch.
You know when a Tennessee fan is beaten because they do one of two things. They say this cliche over and over. We're living rent free in your head, which they just say that anytime you best them in any conversation. Or number two, they say, "Oh, you're just a football school. We've got a really good tiddlywinks and hopscotch program here at Tennessee, and trailer flipping. I don't know what all the other sports they play there at Tennessee that they're good at, and they're very proud of that. But this is a football podcast." Or the other one is that they'll come out and say, "Well, you guys don't you guys need to talk about your own team. Keep our team out of your mouth."
Really?
It's the SEC. We play you every year. It's a huge rivalry. That's the great part about football.
Well, I don't think they have been this mad, Smooch, since they moved that Sudafed behind the counter. That's what I heard. I read that somewhere. All up in arms about that.
My gosh, yeah.
We love you.
Killed the weekend. Killed the weekend.
But that's where we stand, the top five in the DFA, the index, and enjoy it.
And Smooch. Delusion Index.
I dropped that right on your head. I'm sorry.
It was perfect. And we want you to have fun, folks. Remember that we are brethren in the SEC. And not just that, but in college football, we're going to pick on you. And when you're on top, you can do that. And even if you're not, you can have fun doing that. There's always somebody you can look down on. Just enjoy it. Your time will come around, and I promise, some point, maybe.
There is always someone you can look down on.
Everyone from Florida is stupid. Everyone from Florida is dumb.
See?
Yes. There you go. There you go, Tennessee.
Where they lost to Florida last year.
They did. Yeah, but anyway, have fun with that. We do want you to enjoy it. And Coach, we do appreciate you coming on here tonight. Your
fabulous episode.
Your partner has been traveling. What's up with old John?
John's taking a summer vacation with his family. He's over in Belgium right now. Took a European vacation. He's over there right now.
The Griswolds?
I don't know. Yeah, he's Griswolding it right now. It seems like he's having a good time from what I see in his post occasionally. But he was, I think they're in a place right now where he's talking about like the time of day is like from almost 4 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. They've got sunlight all that time. He said it's hardly ever dark there. So very weird and unique. I can't imagine with the jet lag and everything else that goes with it, what he's dealing with. But yeah, it's been kind of nice. I've been doing a little recruit watching this week, been breaking down film with just some base plays that watching from other teams that we'll be playing this year. So I'm getting ready to go full tilt as we get into season, no doubt.
You got a couple of different segments now too, or different.
Yeah, I'm going to break down some different segments. First off, we'll always have the first and fundamental through the Dog Dispatch, but I'm going to do what's called Coach Hayes' Huddle. That's where I'll be breaking down specific plays in a game. And I'm also going to do like a fun kind of thing called Hayes' Hold'em, kind of like Texas Hold'em, but it's in the sense of Hayes' Hold'em, where it's just going to be basically a play during the game that they get where we see where a referee just didn't make a call. You've probably seen it through ESPN where they did that. Come on, man,
Right.
And I'm going to do something like that where basically I'm just going to be giving refs hell for a couple of plays and
I'm
just
in
have a
on
little
that.
fun with it.
All in, as they say.
And then I'm going to be doing a hunker down session. Hayes' hunker down is going to be on recruiting. I'm going to focus on a recruit, talk about his development, what he looks like, what his potentials are, what his in-skill ability is at that point, and be able to just try to bring, all these guys do such a great job with the recruiting trail with On3 and 247 and all the different casters that are out there. So what I'm just going to do is take that information and apply it for what I know and what my knowledge is for, which is just to basically give the fanatic what they want and telling you what he's about, what his skill levels are, what he looks like, what his potential is, those kinds of things. So
I love that. I can imagine it'd been great to have you like with a these 3 stars, like a Lad McConkey or something like that, where the casual fan may just look at the stars and they don't know when they watch the film they're watching a guy with elite agility that could become an elite route runner, that type of thing. So.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the reason why I want to be able to do that, because I don't like to do comps. I've told you that. But, it's easy when you can kind of say, well, he looks a little bit like this. Just like I just told you about, just put it on Twitter the other day, or X, however you want to call it, the Roldan kid that's now on the radar now at wide receiver out of North Oconee. I just watched him put a little segment on Twitter with that, just showing you his elite speed. This is a new kid, I think, and he's got an official visit this weekend too. So I'm excited to see if that's another recruit we're looking to have committed here in the next few weeks.
Oh, nice.
So, but anyhow, but that's what's going on.
Coach Hayes Huddle. You can find him all over the social medias. Does a great job. We do always appreciate when you come on here and give us some expertise. Sure enough. And you can find us also at the Dawgs Show Pod across all our medias, Smooch. And please go over to YouTube and watch all the hard work we put into our YouTube page and the video and graphics that go along with that.
Yeah, man.
All right, we're going to have looking to have, like I said, Zulu Trojan on next week. Hopefully that pans out, and should be a great show as we talk to somebody on the West Coast, maybe get a different insight and everything's been going on under Lincoln Riley. But great show. All right, anything to close, Smooch?
I forgot something, so let me do it right before I close.
Coach Hayes, Coach Hayes.
I love it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.
You got it, buddy.
For Coach Hayes and Smooch Moncrief, this is Troop Brinson saying so long. We'll see you next week.
This is the Dawgs Show with Troop and Smooch.
This is the creative process, Troop Brinson. You cannot force open the petals of a flower. You just plant, water, and let grow.